Welcome to A Magical Life, Health, Wealth and Weight Loss. I'm your host, Magic Barclay, lead practitioner at Holistic Natural Health Australia and #1 best-selling author. In this podcast, I aim to give you practical tips on how to accelerate and sustain your health, increase your financial, spiritual and emotional wealth, and to look at something that haunts many of us needlessly, weight loss. In some episodes, I'll have guests available to give you even more tips, but in others, the floor is yours. Drop us a line at A Magical Life Podcast on Facebook and let me know what you would like to know more about. Now, sit back and enjoy, because it is time for you to create and truly discover a magical life. Welcome back to A Magical Life. This is episode 36, and we're back with Dr. Perry Nickelston, talking all things lymphatic, mojo, and stop chasing pain and more. Welcome back, Perry.
Thank you very much for having me back. Nice I didn't scare you off from the first episode.
You could never scare me off, and I'm sure the listeners have learnt a lot about toothbrushes and the lymphatic system already. What are your top 3 tips to creating wealth, be it personal, financial, or emotional?
That's a great one, right? Well, I can tell you this much, though, what I've discovered in my own journey, and I think what most humans discover is that financial wealth doesn't carry over to emotional wealth, health, and happiness at all. Some of the most unhappy people you'll ever see have more money than they know what to do with. It doesn't satisfy this longing that we have as humans in general for connection, love, acceptance, belonging, community, right? And that was in my journey too. I honestly was speaking with my wife the other day, saying, I look back on some of the times where we were struggling the most early on when I was trying to get started and raising a family. It was difficult, but I almost think I was happier at the time overall. Just like it zeroes you in onto what really matters. And then, it's that old cliche, if you can find what you love to do and you're passionate about it, you'll never work another day in your life. And it's very true. And I think that it's empowering to be able to do that for yourself and not fall into the trap of the expectations that others have for you. And it's difficult because some of the most toxic people in your life are going to be the ones that are closest to you. And they're the ones that will hold you down. I call it the crabs in the bucket syndrome, where if you're trying to go for the top of the bucket, just as you're about ready to get there, one of the other crabs are going to pull you back in because they don't want you to get out. They want you to be miserable just like them, and because misery loves company. But it'll be disguised as concern for your welfare. Or what I hate is the 2 words, I just can't stand them: be realistic. I mean, you might as well just kill my soul when you tell me that, because the being realistic is 100% subjective, by the way. And anybody who ever said be realistic, in my opinion, never achieved anything of greatness, you might say. Doesn't mean you act frivolous and you do things without thinking, but you believe in possibility. You believe in potential. You believe in magic. You believe in that butterfly effect of how one small thing can make a difference, but bringing yourself truly to it with whatever you're doing. And I've even told my sons this, like my sons are older now, they're 24 and 19, which I can't believe I actually have to say I have children that old.
I'm with you. Mine are 21 and 18. And
I just turned 54 and I'm like, what? And I thought, listen, it doesn't matter to me what you choose to do in life, as long as you're happy and fulfilled doing it. That's the only thing that I want for you. And I wish that more humans, not just parents, but more people would talk to other people that way. I think that's the biggest one. Here's the thing about financial wealth too. When you come from that position of doing what you love to do, doing what you're passionate because you're doing it because you want to do it, you are putting this form of energy into the universe that it's just a sense of being. It's a sense of intention and attention and awareness that grows. And then you're not even going after financial success, but it usually shows up at your door along the way, right? And I've actually found, to be honest with you, the intention of what you're doing makes a difference on your ultimate happiness, financial and that, because anytime I've ever gone into something thinking, oh man, I'm going to be making a lot of money with this thing, it wasn't the same as when I went in there and like, I just can't wait to do this, right? And then the other stuff is a byproduct of that. And I think that's why so many people struggle. And they lay this big framework of, what they need to do next and my action plan, and they've got all this stuff thing, but they never actually take a step towards it. There's something that Todd Durkin, let me see if I remember it. He used to say, he said, fire, aim, ready. Like, just shoot the thing. Worry about aiming it later. Just pull the trigger, because so many people are like aiming up the shot. I think I'm ready. And you're like, okay, any day now. And then he said, no, you pull the trigger and then you adapt along the way, because then you got no choice, right? I mean, you're already falling out of the airplane. You better figure out how to open the damn chute.
Exactly. People overthink things too much. By the time they get there, they've either missed the shot, or if it's a parachute drop, they've missed the place they're supposed to land.
You can figure a lot of stuff out when you're in a crunch, when the earth's coming at you pretty fast, right? You become suffering and pain and stuff like that. You can become very creative. That's what happened to me with the lymph. Like, I would not have gone down this road of exploration and what I know now if I didn't have that hardship. And I speak to many people that have been through something similar with illnesses of, say, for instance, a life-threatening illness like cancer, that I've had myself in the past. And they've gone through things and become very close to not being here. And then they say, you know what? It really was awful, but I don't think I would take it back or change it, because it taught me things or showed me things that I never would have seen or forced to look at if I didn't go down that road. Because you're never going to change when you're comfortable, because why the hell would you? You're comfortable. It's only through that, you get comfortable being uncomfortable kind of thing that the Navy SEALs say here in the US. But it's where you don't want to go that you're forced to go that you'll adapt. And that's what makes us resilient as humans. And I think you're seeing some of that in relationship to what's going on in the world today with the pandemic. There's some different reframes that people are doing that they would have never had to do before in relationship to discovering something new for themselves, or discovering something new for humanity's sake.
And you were talking about, having to make those life changes. I look at the person I was pre-cancer and what I was striving for and the things that I thought were important. And now going for a walk and seeing a kangaroo in the park, or watching, an eagle fly overhead, or just even watching some flowers bloom means so much more than they did when I thought I was healthy.
Yeah, it's just that awareness and attention that we're so wrapped up in going to the next thing that we're never in the current thing, right? So one of the things that was most of my life, I was never truly in a moment. My mind was somewhere that I've already been, maybe with regrets of something or something that I wish I did that it's not going to change anything when you do that. Or I'm projecting ahead to the future and worrying about something, and that's not going to change anything. But I was never in the moment, right? Wherever you're going to be there, just be there, right? Wherever you go, there you are, right? And it was not easy, because it's like this ingrained neural habit that you fall into and you don't even realize that you're doing it. And then now it's even more difficult, because now you've got this this thing in your hand with your phone and you're with human beings around you, but you're not with human beings around you anymore. You're in some other place. And when I would just take a moment to, it's actually a very effective form of helping people with pain, especially chronic pain, or learning to get a sense of their own body, is to take a moment and just begin to pay attention to the sensations around you, from the noise, the smell, the sounds, the textures. And because there's so much information coming into your brain every single second, you can't comprehend it. Because if you did, you couldn't move, because you would just shut down from overstimulation. And one of the things that keeps people in chronic pain is the lack of awareness of what's really driving how they live and how they move. And that's why when we teach breathing techniques, people get so caught up in what kind of breathing technique should I do? Which one's the best? My answer is yes, by the way, which means I want you to do a lot of different ones. And then I tell people, just by the nature of you becoming more aware of your breath, you actually change your breath, because now you're aware of it. So sometimes it's just that simple. It's like with exercise. If somebody said, Doc, why does this exercise work so well? And my answer is always the same: because you never did it before. Like, that's why. It's just something different, right? That your body needs. Because trust me, if you only did that exercise from now on, you're going to get worse, which means you're going to have to pick something else different to do. So the answer to the question of how people can begin to change how they feel and how they move is just become more aware of things, but add a lot of different variation, variability, and variety into what you're doing. And the one way you can do that is to become more aware of the different things that are around you. I studied a lot of neurodevelopmental patterns. That's like how you learn to move as a baby and an infant, and on the ground, and developing these big patterns before, so you could stand up, is you just lie down on the ground and your legs are straight and your arms are by your side, and you can have a pillow behind your head if you need to. But they would just say, I want you to notice the pressure on your left side compared to your right side. And then I would never, ever notice that, holy cow, I had a lot more pressure on my left hip into the ground than my right one. And just paying attention to subtle things like that, you notice a shift in your stress, and a shift in your tension, and a shift in your breathing, just from taking a moment of body awareness. Very powerful. That was a very powerful lesson for me.
Speaking of body awareness, this is a little bit probably off track from my normal podcast information, but you're talking about body awareness, you're talking about breathing, and about being present and understanding the movement that is needed, the breathing that is needed, etc. And one word jumps out, and I would really love you to explain this to the listeners, and that's the vagus nerve. You know, I've got this saying, I can hear it from your mouth in my head, that what happens in Vegas never stays in Vegas. And everything you've spoken about so far, yeah, I think maybe the listeners need to hear a little bit about the good old vagus nerve.
That's going to be a hard one. For me, a little bit about the vagus, that's a lot to ask, because I could go for like a month on the vagus nerve. But yeah, I kind of played that little tongue in cheek, and because in the United States, you have Las Vegas, right? And one of their biggest promos was, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And then I just twisted it around, and I'm like, what happens in Vegas goes everywhere, which means that the vagus nerve, because that nerve is probably the most important nerve in the human body in relationship to helping you heal and recover and regenerate. And basically, for those that might not be familiar with it, the vagus nerve, you actually have one on the left side of your body, one on the right side of your body. And it's what they call a cranial nerve, which means it comes from the brain stem in the back, along the back part of the skull. And then it goes down to the organs of your body. They call it the wandering nerve, because it kind of goes like almost everywhere. But its primary job is to put you in a state of relaxation. for what they call the parasympathetic nervous system. I think most people, if they've gone through biology class, have heard of sympathetic nervous system and then parasympathetic. And sympathetic is the one that most people are on all the time with stress and anxiety and not knowing and lack of control. And it's just your fight, flight, freeze, freak out. You're just always in the survival mode of go, 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 go. You can't relax. You stop breathing. You got excess tension. Blood flow like restricts, right? And it's just a constant state of modern day living. And the opposite of that is what you need to heal. You got to go the opposite of that. And most people can't get out of it. And the most important nerve to be able to do that is the vagus nerve. So when you can begin to stimulate that nerve just a little bit, it takes you down in that stress. We call it the wine and dine and relaxation. It's just like, you know, so you can recover. And if you're always in this defense mode, you can't heal because you're always breaking your body down. And I forget who it was. He said cells are either in growth mode or defense mode. And you can't be in both at the same time. You got to pick one. I think it was Joe Dispenza. He's very big into the mindset. I'm very excited to say he's going to be on my podcast soon, by the way. And he said that it's so true. It's that simple. You got either or. And most people are in defense mode. So when we work the vagus nerve, that's why breathing really helps do that. When you work the lymphatic system, you help do that. When you work the organs of the body that I teach in my program, it does that too. And that's why breathing is so powerful, because breathing helps the organs and it helps the vagus. So it does both. And it's probably the easiest one that people can do. But it's like I said before, people get so stressed out of what way they're supposed to breathe. And I'm like, the whole purpose of breathing is not to stress out. So don't stress out about breathing. Just pick different ones. Like close your mouth, breathe in and out through your nose more than you do now. Start there, right? Just do that.
And that way you reduce the bacteria that you're bringing into the body. You get proper deep breaths. You're moving and stimulating the vagus. Like, it's just amazing. Just that one little tip on breathing.
That's what really magic. It's renewed my love for what I do, of going back to simplicity, honestly. Like, because I find them so powerful. And I just feel that people overlook them, maybe because they don't understand. Maybe it wasn't delivered to them how powerful it can be and how simple it can be. But I'm trying to teach people long-term things for the rest of your life, not really intensive, hard things to do that you do for a month or two. Like you go through these intense diets, right? And then you quit and then you go back to poor habits. Or you go to intensive rehabilitation for your back pain. And then after that, you go back to poor habits. And you don't have to change all of your habits at once. That's the whole thing. That's usually where failure comes into play, because you change too many things at one time. And you just do one small thing. And then you build on top of that, and you build on top of that. And then after a couple of weeks and after a couple of months, or even up to a year, you're like, holy cow, like I can't believe how much weight I lost or how much better I feel. Just that little and often over the long haul is magical, you might say.
Now, speaking of weight loss, we do cover that here on this podcast. And it's something that so many of us really needlessly obsess and have to deal with every day. What's your experience with weight loss, and what tips do you have for the listeners?
Great question. Well, I struggled with weight loss most of my life. I was very overweight, obese, introverted, shy teenager and adolescent. I got picked on relentlessly, and I had a very poor self-image of myself. And I was not in good health. And then that's what got me into bodybuilding and fitness, because it gave me a sense of control of something that I could do to go somewhere, put some effort in and change how I looked and change how I felt about myself. But I always caution people too that I actually went the other way as well. I became too obsessive with bodybuilding and fitness and nutrition, as to where my whole self identity came from what my physical appearance was like. And I had a dysmorphia the other way, where I wasn't ever muscular enough. And I became obsessive about nutrition, where I was weighing food or eating every 2 3 hours and getting enough protein. And I actually just stopped living because I was so obsessed about that. The pendulum can swing both ways. So one of the things that I tell people in relationship to nutrition, because people ask me this all the time about diet, but I really think that's a very individual thing, because as you know from studying how the body reacts to foods, not everybody reacts the same way to a food, even though it's considered a healthy food. For instance, you find that a lot with what they call nightshade vegetables like peppers and potatoes and eggplants and tomatoes. And they're considered healthy, but they can really cause a big problem for some people, that they just can't eat them and they just don't know it. So what's considered healthy is relative, but beyond like a bowl of cornflakes, like Frosted Flakes or something. I mean, you kind of know that one, right? But it's always the stuff that everybody already knows. It's the moderation, first of all, right? It's the mixture of the portions on your plate, things like that. And I'm not going to go down the vegan or, keto or all those things, because I'm a big believer that if you do just one thing for too long, no matter what it is, you're going to get worse, because the human body is not meant to do that. It needs variation, variability, and variety. That's how it becomes more adaptable. The more you do of just one thing, the weaker you become, in my opinion. I don't care how good it is. And you become more vulnerable in relationship to that. But I can tell you the one thing that was the most powerful for me, and I never did it over the years because I was so worried about eating all the time in fitness. I began to do, for me, intermittent fasting. And that was a big game changer for my health overall, where I would slowly work up to 16 hours of not eating food. But I couldn't do 16 hours right out of the gate. I needed to do like 8, then 12, then 14, then 16. Right now, I found my sweet spot at 15, because I know that that's just a little bit too much for me. That did wonders from a standpoint of, first of all, just not having to worry about eating all the damn time, because that takes a lot of time in your day. But just giving your stomach and your digestive system a break. That's a huge amount of energy for your body to do that all the time. And to have those two combinations of a little bit of time to not eat and then give my stomach and my intestines a break was really, really big for me. So that's probably one of the biggest things. And then combining that with my lymph work, I lost 30 pounds in 1 month when I did those, and I didn't feel like I was being punished while losing weight. You know what I mean? I wasn't intentionally trying to lose weight. I just wanted to see how it would feel from not eating for a little while.
Right? That's fantastic. And with intermittent fasting, some of the listeners out there might be going, well, I can't not eat. What do you think you're doing at night time? When you're asleep, you're not eating. Extend that. One really easy way to do intermittent fasting is eat your last meal earlier in the evening, start your fast from then, and then just eat your first meal a bit later. And that's how you'll get that 8 to 16 hour window in there. And you can increase that more and more just by eating a little bit earlier, eating a little bit later in the morning, without taking your day going, oh, well, I'm fasting, I can't eat now. It's something you can incorporate in life.
Yeah, that's really great advice. That's what I actually ended up doing, where My kind of sweet spot right now is I usually will have my last meal typically at 6 p.m., sometimes 7 p.m. And then, I'll sleep, and then I usually don't have my next meal until the following morning, like 9 or 10. So when I do the intermittent fasting, so I tell people you have to learn to do things for your own body. Like I said before, I started with 8, 12, 14, 16, and then 15 ended up being the one for me. But I wasn't like hard obsessive compulsive either. When I woke up in the morning, I would still have my glass of water, and then I would have my coffee, my black coffee mixed in there. So technically you're breaking your fast, but I was not eating solid food at the time. So for me, it was a nice carryover to keep my metabolism going. And that's been good for me. And then I know that I've got from 9 or 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. to eat whatever I want. And now that you can eat whatever you want, usually you'll find yourself making better choices when you can eat whatever you want.
Totally. Listen to your body. Like if your body says, I feel really tired after I eat potato and bogged down and I think I need a nap, then don't eat the potato. That's an indication that nightshades are not for you. One of my sons, he can't eat celery. And it's not because he doesn't like it, but he doesn't like it because he can't eat it. Makes him feel nauseous. We worked out he has an oxalate issue, and the celery brings that forward. So all he could say when he was younger was, I don't like celery. Listen to your body. There's a reason why you won't like every single thing. And we really have to go back to that intuition, that gut intuition. If I eat A, I'm going to feel B, and that's going to create C. So dieting itself doesn't work, but listening to your body does. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really think that that's so true. It's individual and it's empowering. People reach out to me a lot through social media because I try to put a lot of information out there about that. And I get asked a lot about, what do you think about this nutrition plan or this diet plan? And I don't really make a lot of recommendations on that because, first of all, I'm not trained as an expert as a dietitian, but I can just speak from my own experience. But I typically will tell them it's highly individual, because I've learned over time through my own illness, many of the things that I was eating to try to recover because they're considered healthy, or they were recommended to eat because they're good for whatever type of condition that I was diagnosed with, they actually were not helpful for me at all. I was the opposite because my body just responded differently to the food or the combinations of the food, one of them being nightshades. I used to go to the store and I'd get hummus, and then I'd get a bag of small little peppers, and I would sit and I would eat peppers out of the bag and putting them into the hummus. And then it was like a few hours later, my eyes would be leaking, like teary, and I would have a lot of brain fog. My wife would be like, are you here? Like I would just be somewhere else. And I just thought I was doing good because it's vegetables, right? It's a bag of things, and then it's hummus. But first of all, you find out that the peppers have that nightshades, which can be highly inflammatory. And then, at least in the United States, chickpeas and hummus are one of the foods that are on the dirty dozen of having the most glyphosate sprayed on them and pesticides on them that you can eat. So I'm slamming toxins into my system like crazy and putting in inflammatory foods. So my immune system was like, Perry, what are you doing, man? And it just was going the opposite way. So I usually will, nutrition is very interesting. And a lot of it is how I approach things in relationship to exercise or therapies that I used to tell people. I found more success in not what you start doing, but what you stop doing. So I want you to eliminate some of these habits before you do it, because you'll find out that subtraction is a form of addition. It's the same thing with the lymphatics, where the lymphatic system is designed to remove waste from the body. What kind of waste? Yes, you name it. It's supposed to try to help you take it out, because we don't want a lot of waste in the body, because you can begin to deteriorate really fast when you can't get rid of waste. And then we need to put nutrients into the body all of the time through our food primarily and through breathing, because oxygen is a nutrient, right? And so the nutrients have to come in, what we call our groceries, and then waste has to go out, which is what we call our garbage. And something that I discovered through my work with lymphatics is that everybody was so busy trying to figure out what nutrients to put in there and all the different breathing techniques, but they didn't take the garbage out first. So what you have to do is get rid of the waste first, then put the nutrients in, and it's a completely different result. And so what we say is garbage out first, groceries in second. That's how it works. And it may seem like that's not a big deal, but that's going to be a difference between it working and not working. I'll tell you that much.
Totally. Perry, it's been amazing having you on here and sharing your tips to the listeners. Now, people can find you at Stop Chasing Pain. You've got your website, stopchasingpain.com. You're quite frenetic on Instagram, Facebook, and also on YouTube. So, listeners, normally I ask my guests for a freebie, but Perry has plenty of information out there for you. Start trolling him on Instagram and you will learn so much about the body, probably more than you can handle. And certainly on Facebook, a lot of those pictures of those old books are up there that Perry was talking about during our discussion. And reach out, learn a bit about the lymphatics. I myself have done Perry's courses, and I can vouch for the information. It's absolutely amazing. And if you want to know what a toothbrush and a ninja star can do for you, get in touch with Perry. Thanks so much, Doc, for your time. And one final tip for the listeners to create a magical life would be?
Oh, that's a great one. First of all, thank you very much for the beautiful, kind words and for having me on the show. I really did have a great time. And I'd probably say a tip: movement is key, right? Movement is life, but I don't want people to get stressed out about if they're moving right or moving wrong, because that's a big thing that I'm trying to change in the industry and in the world, is that humans are designed to move in all different ways. And I teach people 4M motion, and I would like to just tell people that this is what I want you to keep in mind when you move. If you just follow these 4 principles, you're going to be okay. Right? It's move more of yourself than you do now, more often than you do now, more ways than you do now, more environments than you do now. But it basically falls into do lots of different things in many different ways in many different environments, and you'll get where you want to go. You'll have a difference in your life. And yes, it's just that simple.
Thanks so much. That is brilliant. So movement is key. And yes, you can move more, move often, move in various places. As the doctor said, go for it. Just move. Now, coming up in episode 37, you have me talking about environmental connection. We'll be talking about movement there too. And coming up, we have some more amazing guests joining. So please, for today, thanks, Dr. Perry, for coming in. And listeners, go forth and create your magical life.
Thanks for listening today. Please subscribe to hear future episodes, leave a review, and share this podcast. You can follow us on Facebook at A Magical Life Podcast or at Holistic Natural Health Australia. That's holistic with a W. You can find us on Instagram at Holistic Natural Health or at www.holisticnaturalhealth.com.au. That's where you'll access all sorts of articles, freebies, and more.